Okay, guys, today we are going to discuss another interesting biology topic for GCSE exam, ecology. Let us see the subject. Thanks to PMT Education for the baseline notes. First, we are discussing adaptations, interdependence, and competition. Communities. An individual is part of a species. Say, for example, if you are an individual, a boy or a girl, you are a part of a species known as human species. We live in its habitat. So, for example, we live in Birmingham, London, which is a kind of a habitat within a population. Many different populations interact in the same habitat. For example, if you take our habitat, we have interactions between like dogs and fishes and human beings, etc. It creates the community. The populations are often dependent on each other. Okay, are you following that? Ecosystem is the interaction of a community with non-living abiotic parts. So it's very important. So there is something known as community, there is something known as ecosystem. Community means only living beings are there. Ecosystem means there is also non-living parts. Say for example, we have buses, we have mountains, we have like forest field, something like that, which in general we consider as a non-living thing. Living things are the plants and animals. Okay, so non-living things are the landscapes, seashore, etc. So non-living things are called as abiotic. Bio means living things. We are studying biology. So whichever is non-living, it is known as abiotic. So when you have interaction of community with non-living abiotic parts, it is known as ecosystem. Organisms are adapted to live in the conditions of their environment. So the new words possibly what we have learned in this is species, for example, human species, habitat, for example, the country we are living within a population. Community is the one where many populations like horses, fishes, everything join together. Ecosystem is community with non-living things also. So slowly we are increasing the inclusion of other things. Okay. Organisms which need the same resources compete for each other. For example, most of the organisms need food. So unfortunately, there is a competition for the food. There can be competition within a species or between different species. Say for example, if a owner raises 2-3 dogs, and there may be a small competition between the dogs for the same food, and sometimes the dogs will fight with cats in a common place for the food. So the competition can be between the species or different species. Plants may compete for light, space, water, mineral ions. You can see sometimes in a plant there will be a creeper which goes around the plant and gets top of the plant to get better light, to get better water, to better exposure, etc. So plants can also compete. Okay. Animals may compete for space, food, water, and even mating partners because the sexual life is active in animals. Interdependences describes how an organism in a community depend on other organism. So competition is the one where how they fight with each other or compete with each other. Interdependence explains how they are dependent on each other. These include for food, shelter, reproduction. Say for example, plants depend upon bees for pollination, seed dispersal. So if a fruit is taken by a bird, the bird will eat the fruit part of it and take the seed from one place to another. So that helps in the plant in germinating at a distant place. So birds are dependent upon trees to take shelter. We saw a nice nest built in the hedge behind our house. So it's a good example of there is interdependence. Flowers are pollinated with bees as we discussed. The removal or addition of a species to a community can affect the populations of others greatly as it changes the prey or predator numbers. Say for example, if there is a African forest with lots and lots of zebras and maybe like one or two cheetahs living there. So the zebras have enough space to graze, and the cheetahs are preying on the zebras in a very constant manner. So the zebras population is maintained, cheetahs population is maintained. Let's for example something happens and both the cheetahs die. And what happens? The zebras will multiply by reproduction without any control. So that results in overutilization of the grazing field, and some zebras will end up having no food available. So even the balance between prey and predators can cause drastic effect in the balance. Okay, that's what they are explaining here. A stable community is the one where all the biotic, living and abiotic, non-living factors are in balance. So that's what we want. We want the biotic things which are living and abiotic things like mountains, beach and all the non-living things to be in a balance. Because of this, the populations remain roughly constant, which means there will be some small changes, but the changes will be like an increase followed by a decrease, and overall it get averaged out. When they are lost, it is very difficult to replace them. As I said, if couple of cheetahs are lost, then you can't bring just like the cheetah from a different forest miles and miles away. It's very difficult to replace the balance. Examples include tropical rainforest, oak woodlands, coral reefs. They all maintain a kind of a nice balance. We have seen beautiful coral reefs in Egypt and say Australia, and we know that a lot of coral reefs are getting lost due to pollution in the water and increase in the temperature, etc. Once the coral reefs are getting destroyed, it's impossible to replace them, because you can't just like that go under the sea and plant a coral reef. It has to happen naturally. Okay. Now we are discussing about the abiotic factors. So when I am discussing abiotic factors, you yourself thought, what is this? So abiotic factors have so much of value in the community. We always think about giving importance only to the living things. So abiotic things are also important. In fact, that's what makes the biotic things to have a very congenial life. Okay. So abiotic factors are non-living factors. For example, light intensity. Light is required for photosynthesis of the plant. The rate of photosynthesis affects the rate at which the plant grows. Plants can be the food sources for the animals and many organisms. Temperature affects the photosynthesis. Moisture level affects both plants and animals need water to survive. So moisture levels are important. Soil pH and mineral content is important. So all these things are not biotic. They are called as abiotic, but it's quite evident and clear how far they are quite important. Wind intensity and direction. Wind affects the rate of transpiration, which means movement of water from roots to leaves in a plant. If there is good amount of wind, the water from the leaves will get evaporate quickly, and the plant has to take a lot of water from the roots to the top. Okay, that is known as transpiration, which is the movement of water from the root to the leaves. Transpiration. So how we say like respiration, which is movement of air in our lungs, expiration, which is exhalation of the air in the lungs, transpiration from the root to the top of the plant is known as transpiration, that is movement of the water. Okay, so if you use some new words, the marks will be very good. Carbon dioxide level. Just now we discussed that carbon dioxide affects the rates of photosynthesis. It also affects the distribution of the organisms, and some will thrive in high carbon dioxide, some will thrive in low carbon dioxide, etc. Oxygen levels for aquatic animals. So levels in water vary very greatly. Unlike oxygen levels in the air, lots of fish requires high concentration of oxygen to survive. Otherwise, they need to come to the surface to get the oxygen from the air, isn't it? So we know that oxygen level is important for the aquatic animals also. So just to revise the abiotic factors, the main subtitles to remember are light, temperature, moisture, soil pH and mineral, wind, carbon dioxide, oxygen. Okay, how to remember this? Light will give temperature, moisture is in the air and also soil as pH. The last three are something to do with the air, wind, carbon dioxide and oxygen. Easy to remember. Okay. Next we are discussing the biotic factors. As you know, biotic means a living factor, and you should be able to explain the effect of change in a biotic factor. Biotic factors can affect a community. For example, food availability, new predators, new pathogens, competition between the species. So again, it's quite easy to remember the biotic factors. Okay, food, new predators, new pathogens, competition. Next one is the adaptation. So how an organism adapts to the surrounding things. Say for example, structural adaptation. A sharp teeth of a carnivore like a lion or a tiger will help to tear the meat apart. Camouflage of the lizard or lioness's coat, they will help them to camouflage against the surroundings. And in cold environment, the animals are having a thick layer of the fat for the insulation. Okay, so you know the animals a lot about which are all having the fat. Say for example, in this picture you can see the animals which having a good amount of fat, like a bunny. Okay, so it helps in protecting them from the cold environment. Okay,
That's not funny.
bunny.
That's not funny.
How behavior is helpful. So individuals may play dead to avoid predators. So if there are predators are coming, the behavior wise they will just act as if they are died. And once the lion or cheetah move away, the deer may just jump and run away. Okay, basking in the sun to absorb the heat, and courting behavior to attract a mate. You can see the peacock opening the feather and doing a nice dance. It's to attract the mates. And functional, involved in process such as reproduction and metabolism, late implantation of embryos, conservation of water through producing little sweat. So in summer the animals won't produce any sweat, so there are various ways by which they adapt. Extremophiles, some animals live in extreme conditions, that is extremophiles. Philes means love. With love they live in extreme conditions, that is extremophiles. Okay, so whatever phile means for hemophilia. Okay, so phile means love, you can remember the term like that. So examples for extremophiles are those who are living in high temperature, high pressure, salt concentrations. Some bacteria live in quite deep sea vent and high pressure areas. Examples of adaptations for different scenarios. Say for example, cold climate, as I showed, the bubber or fur coat. Okay, do you know what is bubbler? Okay, so bubbler is like this. Okay, so they have such a high thick fat coat, so they won't have any
Blubber.
cold at all. Yeah, and we discussed about the bunny already, so they are all very good example to say that you have the adaptations. Okay, and dry climate. So in dry climate they try to retain the water by producing very concentrated urine and not sweating also, and resting in the shady areas. And plant also adapt by curling the leaves to reduce water. We know in the country where we are living, the plants shed the leaves during the cold season because there is no sun. There is no point in having the leaf which takes the energy away from the plant rather than producing photosynthesis. But as you see, once a spring comes, it blooms, all the leaves come out, and then the whole sunny season or the summer season they work hard to store enough photosynthesis for the winter. Organization of an ecosystem. How a ecosystem nicely organizes and what are the levels in the organization. So feeding relationships are shown by food chain. So here you need to know about the food chain. Okay, they begin with a producer. They are always photosynthetic organisms, usually a plant or algae. So producers are always simple. It starts from simple things like algae or plants. Okay, and then through photosynthesis they make glucose. And the glucose is used to make other biology molecules in the plant, like for example fruits, bark, etc. It will be taken up by primary consumers. Say for example, again a small creatures like a birds or something which will eat the fruits from the plant, and then they are taken up by the secondary consumers. So that bird will be taken up by maybe another eagle. Okay, so there is secondary consumer, and they are consumed by the tertiary consumer. Say for example, a cheetah, a eagle is flying bit low or sitting, and cheetah will attack the eagle. So it is tertiary consumer. So this is known as food chain. So you should be able to understand the food chain quite clearly. That's very important. Say for example, these are all the good example for the food chain and energy flow. So there is a primary producer, and then the secondary producer, and then the tertiary producer, etc. Okay, that's very important to know. Yeah.
What about the sun?
Sun. So sun is used by the plant to produce. Here we are discussing only biotic. Okay, sun can be considered as abiotic. Okay, even though sun has so much of power, sun is like a light. So light, we saw, no, light, air, temperature, they are all abiotic. Okay, so here we are discussing the levels of organization. We can see only the biotic things. So producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. To work out the distribution and abundance of species in an ecosystem, tools called transects and quadrats are used. You can then process this information by calculating the mean, mode, median, then drawing a graph. So what is happening is average amount of squirrels living in an area. Okay, so mean, mode, average, adala vachi we can easily measure this. Okay, so we are using methods known as transects or quadrats. Okay, a stable community will show population cycles between predators and prey. So a predator will slightly increase, prey will decrease, and then the prey will increase, predator will decrease. So there is a slight change of numbers between them. If the population of prey increases, the population of predators will also increase, because predators have something to eat. If predators increases, the prey will decrease, because the prey is eaten up. Okay, this will result in number of prey decreasing after some time, as more would be consumed by the increased number of predators. When there isn't enough prey to feed the predators, the population of predator will also decrease. So thus the population cycle between predator and prey are so interchangeable. Okay, now how materials are cycled. Okay, so the whole earth is made up of only a finite thing. The only thing coming outside the earth is the sunlight. Other than that, atmosphere, water, carbon, earth, mineral, everything is finite. Not even an iota of thing coming from outside other than light. Okay, so lots of different materials are cycled through the ecosystem. Carbon, water cycle are very vital for the life here. So what is carbon cycle? Say for example, carbon dioxide removed from the air in photosynthesis by green plants and algae. They use the carbon to make carbohydrates, proteins and fats. You may think, how plants make fats? If you're eating avocado, avocado has got fats, cashew nuts has fats, all the seeds has fats. So they are eaten by the primary eaters, secondary eaters, tertiary eaters, as we discussed. Okay, so plants are the producers, and carbon dioxide return to the air when plants, algae, animals respire. It's like how we are doing. We eat plant and then we respire out the carbon dioxide, which is taken again by the plant. Carbon dioxide return to the air when food and fossil fuels are burnt. Say for example, human beings, when they were died, they are buried. So we are returning the carbon back to the soil. Fossil fluids are burnt. So that produces carbon dioxide. So that is the carbon cycle. So if you want to see the carbon cycle, there is a nice picture here. You can see that sunlight, photosynthesis, and photosynthesis takes the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and because of the plant respiration. From the plants, it is consumed by the animals, and there is a decomposition with an animal die. Similarly, even in the industries, we are releasing lots of carbon dioxide back to the atmosphere. So this is the carbon cycle. It's very important to know the carbon cycle visually rather than just reading in the material. Okay, it's easy to understand now.
Can you send that picture to me?
It is in the recording. Next, water cycle. So the sun's energy causes water to evaporate from the sea and lakes, forming water vapor. Same. Okay, and the water vapor is formed as a result of the transpiration in the plant. We come across this sentence before. Transpiration is movement of water from roots to the bark, and water vapor rises and then condenses to form clouds. It is returned to the land by the precipitation in the form of rain, and then it runs back to the sea in the form of a river. You may be thinking, how, for example, this river Ganges just going on and on and on and on for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years? How? Because whatever the water taken by the Ganges into the sea got evaporated, the clouds are forming, it gives rain in the land. There is heavy rain happens in big mountains like for example Everest, and sometimes even if the rain is not forming, because of the cold top in the mountain, it forms the ice cap, and when the temperature changes in the spring and summer season, the ice cap melts and water goes back to the sea. So thus we get perennial rivers. Obviously rivers will be having more strong stream during the winter compared to the summer seasons. Okay, so this is the water cycle. So if you want to see the water cycle, again there is a nice picture there. Okay, so a sun will result in transpiration or from the roots to the bark, and also evaporation of the water from the lake and rivers, and then it causes condensation. Precipitation is the one where the clouds precipitate rain into the mainly into the land and also in the snow capped mountains. Because of this, snow melt and river forms and river goes off. Okay, there are various ways by which you can explain these things. And then but decomposition, a number of factors affects the rate of decomposition. Decomposition means something is getting decomposed back to its original things. Okay, a number of factors can affect decomposition: temperature, water, availability of oxygen. We know how we are preparing compost, so the compost won't form in the ice frosty surface, so there should be good amount of temperature so that the enzymes can work and denature and stop the decomposition, and water is needed and oxygen is needed so that everything happens aerobically. Okay, if it is happens anaerobically, it won't produce good compost. Okay, and compost is the one where biological materials decay, it produces this. It is used by gardeners, farmers as a natural fertilizer. To do this, they have to provide optimum conditions for decay. If more oxygen is available, they respire aerobically, producing heat. Okay, the increased temperature increases the rate of decay, so the compost is made quicker. If you have good temperature in summer season, you get good compost, you know that. And methane gas, microorganisms decompose waste anaerobically, producing methane gas, and this can be burnt as a fuel. If you have methane gas, you can take it, for example the cow and any animal manure can be nicely decomposed into a methane gas, and you can create a pipe and take it back to your house to produce a fuel to cook. It is a very natural, your own method of producing a good gas fuel if you have a good herd of cows in your house. Yeah.
Because you know that cows burp methane.
Yeah, that also has methane gas, but that gas will go waste. But in the cow dung, you can put it into a nice methane gas former. So it decomposes anaerobically, produces methane gas taken in the pipe. In fact, once it correctly decomposes, the methane gas won't be having a bad smell also. It's good inside the house. Okay, you can invest in biogas generators. This is how the biogas generators were made. They have a constant temperature of 30 degrees Celsius with microorganisms keep respiring inside. It cannot be stored as liquid, so needs to be used immediately. That's the disadvantage. So methane gas will be produced, it will be taken in a pipe. You can seal it for maybe some time, but you need to use it as quickly as possible. If somebody is daily cooking, of course you'll be using the methane gas daily. You can investigate the effects of temperature on decay by measuring the pH change of the fresh milk in the presence of enzyme lipase. So it's a small example they are explaining. Make a solution of milk and a phenolphthalein indicator. Okay, very important spelling to learn. Add sodium carbonate, which will cause the solution to become alkaline. Therefore, the phenolphthalein will become pink. Alkaline will show pink color. Okay, place the tube in a water bath at a specific temperature. Add lipase enzyme and begin stopwatch. Time how long it takes for the pink color to disappear. That is, alkaline pH is decreased. Repeat this as different temperature to see which temperature pink color disappears quickest, indicating quickest decomposition. Okay, mostly higher the temperature, decomposition will be quicker. We know anyway. Okay, what is the impact of environmental change in a living organism? Environmental changes affects the distribution of species in a ecosystem. So what are all the environmental changes? Temperature, water availability, atmospheric gas composition. We know that when the climate changes, insects migrate, birds migrate. Based on the water availability, animals migrate in big herds in Africa, for example. And atmospheric gas composition. For example, lichen cannot grow in places where sulfur oxide is present. So whenever the sulfur oxide is released or something like that, lichens won't grow. So animals depends upon the atmospheric temperature, atmospheric gas composition and water availability. These changes may be seasonal, geographic or caused by human interaction. Biodiversity and effect of human interactions on a human ecosystem is a very good topic. Biodiversity, which means there is a diverse amounts of biotics living here. Biotics. We learnt abiotic, light, temperature, etc. Biotics, organisms. Okay. For example, waste management. Biodiversity is a variety of different species of organisms in earth or within the ecosystem. High biodiversity means ecosystem will be stable because you will be having different levels of organisms. We'll be having a producer, we'll be having a primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. So things become stable. So in the example what we studied before, two cheetahs with thousands of zebras. So if two cheetahs were taken away or die, there is an imbalance. But in a case of a biodiversity, there will be two cheetahs, three lions, one hyena, something will be there. So if one is not there, the other will balance it out. That's an advantage of biodiversity. Okay. High biodiversity gives stable ecosystem. Many human activities are having negative effect on biodiversity because unfortunately we target only specific things, whatever we want. So we remove that particular, like a chain, a particular loop in the biodiversity, the chain becomes discordant, disconnected. Okay. The future of human on earth depends upon maintaining biodiversity. For example, for food and new medicines. The impact of our activity is getting bigger as the population is increasing and more resources are used and more waste is produced. More land is used for houses. Pollution kills the plants and animals, and land use is phenomenal nowadays. If you have so much of land use, then you will have less place for the green space. That's why the government has to make the regulation. If you're creating a very big estate, so much of percentage of green lands and grass should be there. Okay, but the problem is that grass what we are creating is a clean, nice cut grass. We put all the weeds to kill the weeds. We'll put everything so that none of the other organisms will grow except for the green, clean looking good grass. That is not biodiversity. Okay, there is no diverse there. It's a single organism living there. Okay, so peat box. What is peat box? Have you seen the peat box? Okay, so these are all like peat box. Okay, so there's a box and box of dead tissue. They are not decomposed. They form a kind of an environment for lots of microorganisms to grow. Sometimes if there is a water stagnation, the fish will grow and some rodents will grow. So peat box forms a very good place for ecologic diversity. Okay, peat box are very,
a very big carbon store.
yes, it produces a very nice carbon sink, they can say.
Carbon sink.
Use correct words, carbon sink. So peat is a material that forms when plant materials has not fully decayed, as there is not enough oxygen. If it is fully decayed, aerobic decomposition, tuck, everything is gone. And it accumulates in bogs that are acidic and waterlogged. You can see those places are not good for us to live, but it's very good for the microorganisms, rodents to thrive. Okay, these bogs are habitat for many species, in particular for migrating birds. If you go to a place known as Vedantangal in Tamil Nadu, it's a good example for the peat bog. Miles and acres of water and peat bogs and lot of animal, lot of especially different hundreds and thousands of species of birds migrate to Vedantangal every winter season from all over the world, like Africa and Australia, etc. People don't know. It's all because of the peat bogs there, and people preserve that without any interference. Okay, and peat bogs are being, once they are destroyed, they are being drained in order to create space for farming, and peat can be used as a compost. Then they are used quicker than being formed. So we can use the peat bog, but you should make sure that in other end the peat bogs are formed. The balance should be there. But if the usage is more quicker than the formation speed, we are losing the peat bog. Deforestation. We know that cutting down of large number of trees happens in the area when there is a real estate formation, etc. And the land is used for cattle raising and rice field, and the trees are used for creating carbons, etc. So this is known as deforestation. The deforestation is one of the very bad thing for the ecology of the earth. Okay, now we are going to the next topic of global warming. So if you want to see the global warming, there are various ways by which you can see the global warming changes happening. Okay, so global warming is a term that reflects to change in the temperature throughout the world. Because of the increase in the temperature, it causes greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane to be produced more, resulting in more heat being absorbed and reflected back to the earth, resulting in the whole earth is warmed up. People are telling the earth temperature is increased by 0.5, 0.3, etc. And the whole earth is getting heating up. The consequences are, because of this, the ice caps in the top of the mountain, they melt, and glaciers in places like Greenland, they will melt, including Antarctica and Arctica. They reduces the habitats, and all these melting things will produce rise in the sea level. That gives the flooding of the cities in the shore of the continents, and temperature will increase, rainfall levels will decrease, organisms even can extinct if this is not properly controlled. How will you maintain biodiversity? A positive interaction with the ecosystem, which means we'll maintain the rainforest, make sure habitats were not destroyed, reducing the pollution, preserving the areas of scientific interest, replant the hedge growers and woodlands to produce the habitat. Okay, we need to recreate, and the usage should be balanced with the creation. While negative effects like production of greenhouse gases, production of sulfuric acid, chemicals in the farming, clearing the land to build or for grazing animals have to be reduced. Okay, so the breeding program should be stopped to endangered species from getting extinct. So you should maintain a correct breeding program, protect the rare habitats, and reintroduction of hedge grows and field margins in the lands, reduction of deforestation so that the carbon dioxide production is kept under control, recycling rather than dumping the waste in the landfill. If you put all the compost in your bin, it goes to the landfill. So you have to produce appropriate amount of compost and use it within your land. After a break, in the next video, we will see trophic levels. Okay.